Welcome everybody. This is a Connect session that we have with Mom Stop the Harm on grandparents raising grandchildren on August the 9th, 2025. And so I just wanted to welcome everybody here today. This recording, you'll probably be accessing it off of our YouTube channel, but it is being recorded. And I just wanted to, again, thank all of our panelists for sharing their passions, their stories, their um, ins and outs, and their vulnerability with us really today. So we will start today's session, and I invite Elder Susie McPherson to say a few words and to open us in a good way. Susie?
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me. My name's Chris Ewing, and I'm just joining a little bit late.
Yep, that's okay. We can hear you.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
If you could just mute your line.
Mute
Hello,
it.
hello everyone. I'll start with some words in my Cree language, and then I'll do a land acknowledgement that I've come to know and share, and then a song, a welcome song. Gisemandu ginanaskamatanananos kagisagach, sawenamanan gamino bimatia. Wichihanan ganawenamanan anos wabake gama dahtagisagaw. Wichihanan ganawenamanan gachkanoni nanan gajwasmasa. Nabawak squawak. Squares isak nabes isak ego magakano enige e apachiguta hanos. Minanan enonosoen ego mino machi hoen. So I want to acknowledge and give thanks for the ancestral territory of the Indigenous nations who were and continue to be on these lands. Want to acknowledge the 600 plus Indigenous nations that were here across Canada prior to European contact, unique and distinct societies with their own languages and systems of governance, living, surviving, and thriving peoples who knew the land, the waters, the skies, the patterns of weather and animals. Who looked after themselves, each other, their communities, and their nations, and who saw themselves as a part of creation and lived as such, always mindful of the generations to come. And so this afternoon, we look to the east, the south, the west, and the north, and we acknowledge the Indigenous nations across the land and their ancestral story, truth, and wisdom that is carried over time to this day. We acknowledge how the story unfolded over time, how the story unfolded and changed over time. And we complete the circle and look to the east, and we acknowledge all the nations who now call this land home, those who came as settlers, visitors, guests, newcomers, immigrants, refugees. We acknowledge their story too and all that they brought here, and we are all mindful of each and every one of our stories that is connected to the Indigenous worldview story that was happening here. And so we give thanks for this day, for each one here, for all that we hold and carry, the story of each one of our lives and the journey that we are on. And so I say, Egusane nananaskamon gachkinonawakamaganat. So this song is a welcome song that is sung by an elder every morning to welcome a new day and the spirit of the directions, the fore and then above, below, and within. I always think of it as grounding and centering us to this time together, and also for the purposes that we're gathered. Welcome the spirit of directions to help us in our understanding of who we are in the lives that we lived, the lives that we live. And so I'll sing the welcome song. I also think of the welcome song as a song that welcomes the spirit of whatever any one of us needs today. Whether it's a spirit of hope, of peace, of love, of acceptance, of courage, whatever anyone needs, we welcome the spirit of that as well. So I'll sing the welcome song here. Hey ya ya ya, hey ya ya ya, hey ya ya ya, oh hey, oh hey, hey ya ya ya, oh hey, hey ya ya ya, hey ya ya ya, hey ya ya ya, oh hey, oh hey, hey ya ya ya, oh hey. Hey ya ya ya, hey ya ya ya, hey ya ya ya, oh hey, oh hey, hey ya ya ya, oh hey, hey ya ya ya, hey ya ya ya, hey ya ya ya, oh hey, oh hey, hey ya ya ya, oh hey. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, hey, oh, hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, hey, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, hey, oh, hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, hey. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh hey, oh hey, yeah, yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Susie. I love hearing that song. It always reminds me to, I love when you share with us that it gives each and every one of us what we need in this moment. So I love that part of the sharing and the song and the meaning. Thank you. Um, Again, I think a couple people popped in a little bit later before as we got started. So we will start and I will introduce our first speaker in just a moment. And we have Rebecca, Dr. Rebecca Saw, who will be sharing, and then we will hear from four different grandparents in different parts of Canada that are raising their grandchildren for various reasons, and they'll each share some of their journey for about 10 minutes each. And then we'll hear from Agnes with Starlings out of Alberta, and then we will have a Q&A time. So if you have questions, please pop them in the chat, and we will have the Q&A at the very end. So. Okay, I would like to, it's my honor. I got to meet Rebecca. I'm just trying to remember. We've done some other work together and some sharing, and I got to meet her. I was excited this year at a harm reduction conference in Winnipeg. I got to actually meet her in person rather than on screen all the time, and that's always a pleasure. Rebecca is a professor in the Department of Community Health Sciences, Cummings School of Medicine, University of Calgary, and is a public health socialist with a PhD that she received in 2008 in behavioral health sciences and addiction studies from the University of Toronto. Her research interests are in public health, harm reduction, approaches to substance use, and drug policy reform. And recently, projects have focused on youth and young adults' cannabis use, um, the overdose prevention, the in family context of substance use, and parent advocacy for action on Canada's toxic drug emergency. And Rebecca will be sharing with us some of the latest literature and things around policy. Thank you so much for being here today, Rebecca.
Wonderful. I should have asked you before when we were just yapping, Antoinette. Can you give me sharing? Because I just have 2 slides. I promise not to PowerPoint people to
um,
exhaustion.
okay,
If you can't, that's totally fine.
I'm sure I can. Just give me a second here. Um,
I will just say in the meantime, thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you, families and advocates and allies of Mom Stop the Harm, I've been working with Mom Stop the Harm and Affected Parents and Families since 2016. And we did a large Canadian study with two now shuttered groups, Mums Do and Voice of the Family, on the experiences of parents whose child had died from drug-related overdose and substance use problems. So we have about 5 publications from that and some videos. So it's just my great honor to continue to support and learn from you. Let me see now. I can share. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Antoinette. Okay. So if people can see, I'm just trying to change. There we go. I'm going to do a little context setting. We don't have specific numbers as far as I could scope out that drill down to grandparents raising grandchildren, or what the literature calls the skip generation, specifically because of substance use causes. But often this is implicated in the literature that there's parental hardship. But when you look at what Stats Canada tells us, you know, a 250,000, it's not an insignificant number of children live in households led by grandparents. And they had this stat that's 12,000 in BC. And that's more than 32,000 children under age 14. So that's not a small number. And, you know, it's sizable enough that we should see more research and policy advocacy than we do have. When I looked at, I'm going to stay on this slide for a minute and just say that when I looked at the literature, there's been an uptick, I guess, following what we would call the current wave of the toxic drug poisoning emergency, or what the American literature would call the opioid overdose crisis. So we're seeing some additional focus in the US literature on what the unique needs of grandparents would be. But surprisingly, there hasn't been that much done. Well, I guess I should never be surprised when it comes to including families and drug use because of the stigma. But really, just as our study was the first study of mothers' advocacy after a child's overdose death, there hasn't been a substantive focus in this area in Canada. And in fact, I did find one grant from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. It's a big funder that we have, led in Prince Edward Island. And that study is called "It Takes a Village to Raise a Grandchild." And that study is being led by some researchers in an advocacy movement called Grand Families Inc. and PEI. However, for someone more oriented to harm reduction, as I am, and as some people are in Mom Stop the Harm, the orientation on that website is a little bit different from what we would see in our thinking about family dynamics, because it talks a lot about enabling and tough love, and some more stigmatizing terms. So my apologies to those folks if they happen to be this webinar in my remarks, but I think there's different orientations on the continuum of how we think about drug use and supporting our family and all our relatives. So that one, I think, you know, I would recommend if you read it, you might be a little bit, if you're a staunch harm reductionist, you might say, hey, that's a bit upsetting to me, the way they're talking about that we're enabling our children and our loved ones. Other than this, you know, there's pockets of research from New Zealand, from Australia, but again, like, the titles of these papers are very stigmatizing. Things like, I just wanted to be a real grandparent, drug use is a scourge and it's victimized my grandchildren, like the things that we may think or feel at times. You know, privately, we all have these spectrums of emotions in regards to the challenging situations we find ourselves in with our loved ones. But to publish papers like this, to me, it just entrenches the stigma. And so when I was reviewing this literature, I was pretty, like, you know, saddened to see that it's one area where they seem to be thinking about things quite traditionally, and about these ideas about tough love, don't enable, you know, you've got to set these boundaries. Boundaries can be healthy, but the way that they are framing it in a lot of the literature is quite negative. And I think it really reinforces some harmful things that we're trying to push back against. And, you know, this is kind of typified in some of the literature early literature really focused on Black grandmothers raising grandchildren in the US as a result of the crack cocaine epidemic in the 80s. So again, it was like compounding stigma of like poverty and being a Black woman and having to raise your grandchildren. So perhaps that is where the literature started, and it's carried over some of the stigma. Likewise, some of the literature comes from rural Appalachia, the East Coast mountain range around Virginia and the East Coast of North America. And again, it's the same type of stigma towards rural people as being maybe unable to care for their children and being educated and using substances. So I think those are the, from where I sit as a researcher, why we have these kind of stereotypes and harmful things. So as I reflected on that literature, and what I'm going to do, Antoinette, is I'm going to make a little bibliography. And when things are available, I'll put a hyperlink. And if it's not, I'll send you the PDFs and then we can have a folder. So if people really want to dive in and see some of these things, but I hesitated to really share them because it can be discomforting to read sometimes when researchers have this stigma or these views. But one of the biggest things I saw is a focus on deficits, right? And then a slight shift towards positive and change. So the negatives, the stress, the emotional toll, the financial toll. And when we ask the questions only about the negatives, we do not see the positives. So that really needs to change about the research for sure, in terms of looking at resilience, in terms of looking at benefits and looking at positive supports for families. But here are the big themes that I think would need to change. And then, of course, we will hear from the grandparents who are the real experts. But as a sociologist and someone who looks at societal change over time, we really need to interrogate and problematize like what a quote unquote normal family looks like. This is something that I think holds back. We know that it's a very kind of middle class North American center to think of a family as a heteronormative family with two parents, man, woman, and children. There's many diverse family formations, many ways that families exist, but we have a stereotype that only this, typical traditional family is a family that can raise healthy and productive citizens. It's a very, what we call in academia, like neoliberal take on where we need to be. And of course, that's just not the case for many of us. Also, in these all or nothing approaches to parenting, they permeate in the culture and they affect all of us raising children, whether it's our own, our children or our grandchildren. This idea of parenting perfection, of keeping things always calm, quote unquote normal. This is setting impossible goals that no parent, especially mother, it's very gendered, and grandmothers can achieve, right? And this really plays into the literature when we talk about, you can't enable, you have to have these firm stances, you have to practice tough love. So all or nothing. We know in harm reduction, that's not what we focus on. We're thinking about any positive change. We're thinking about radical love and empathy. We are taking care of ourselves and setting the boundaries that we need to maintain our own well-being, but we're really thinking outside of the bounds of what is traditional, normal, typical, and accepted, because so much of that has just been shaped by stigma and assumptions about what people should do, right? And what people deserve and what they don't deserve. And we're trying to undo that. Then when we get down to the bigger level outside of family relationships, it's clear that policies and formal supports have not adapted and changed to suit the needs of grandparent caregivers. A lot of this goes unaccounted for when people don't have legal parental rights or custodial relationships where they've formally accessed guardianship. So in that regard, interacting with the various systems such as child welfare, education, even consent to healthcare procedures can be very complicated. And we've seen, of course, this massive policy change and shift in regards to same-sex couples in Canada that happened a few generations ago. Well, I guess started in the 80s. We can say it was that long. It feels like generations ago to me now. These are massive social policy shifts that need to happen. And I think that this wave, when we're seeing these numbers of grandparents caring for grandchildren, that also needs to be accounted for. even small things I know about, like attending school, and they always do a family tree exercise, right? And it's very problematic and painful for many adoptive families, many foster families, and grandparent families too, and children who've lost a parent to overdose or other causes, right? And then I would say too that one positive thing I've seen in harm reduction is the idea of coalition and community building and working across boundaries. I've heard, wonderful, warm conversations from people who identify as drug users and drug user activists, with some folks from Mom Stop the Harm, and who we call lovingly the moms. Reaching out and bridging those what we think might be divides sometimes, and thinking about, well, we can work on these things together. Initially, I think because moms were advocating so strongly, there was a little bit of a pushback, like I don't want a mom telling you what to do, right? And then over time in this movement, since I've been working in it, we've seen people building coalitions, coming together, thinking about community and thinking about things that we have in common to support each other. And in this current moment in North America, when we see increasing division and certain groups, becoming more marginalized and disenfranchised, I think for those of us who care deeply about our family members who are using substances, who are impacted by mental health, and who have other intersecting vulnerabilities, um, you know, if I could just inspire us to build coalitions outside of our own interest and try and work together and build communities for advocacy, that is one way forward that I'm thinking about to keep myself hopeful. So I'll stay enough. I'm sorry it took so long. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm so excited to hear from everyone and hear what you have to share.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for framing it, because there's so much, research that, from what I heard you say, that there's not enough research out there. And we know that this is something that's happening. And where is the research? Because often, for things to come in to fruition, different spaces and places look for that, look for the
Yeah.
data.
And
And
my take is, when women are doing it voluntarily off the side of their desk, people don't really care. And so they're not going to pay attention and study it or address it in policy. Yeah.
so thank you for sharing that. Lots of good things, food for thought. I'm sure I'm going to go back and look at it, and for sure send me the hyperlink and send me the data so that I can share it out with everybody who's registered today. So they will also receive that if that's of interest to people that are on the call. So I'm going to introduce our first grandparent, and Carolyn. And Carolyn is raising her 13-year-old grandson after her daughter's death 3 years ago. So welcome, Carolyn. And I just want to say,
Hi.
as, just before, as our grandparents share, just thank you so much for being willing to share and to be vulnerable with us all today. So thank you.
Absolutely. I think I feel like it's a gift to be able to be here. Um, People, it seems, don't want to hear from this segment of the population, and I really feel the lack of that community of grandparents raising grandchildren. So my grandson, he's now 13. He was 10 when his mom passed away. She was 33. She died from toxic drug poisoning. She had been using methadone to help maintain a substance-free lifestyle well, for quite some time, 6 years, and had relapsed after COVID. I say relapse because I don't have any other word for it. And somebody had given her some drugs, street drugs that were full of carfentanil. So she passed away. My grandson unfortunately found her in the tub. And I'm a retired nurse, so my first strong drive was obviously CPR, do everything I could. I had naloxone in the house, all the things, and we weren't able to bring her back. So that was the beginning of this part of my journey with my grandson. He had lived with me and my family on and off from the time he was born till he was 5. My daughter had attended a couple of rehabs during that time. And she was always very cognizant of not using any substances whenever he was in her care. So she would, go out and he would be with us. So I've always been close to him. I remember promising him when he was about 2 years old one night that I would always try and do everything I could to protect him, that I would always be there for him as I put him to sleep that night. And when my daughter died, that was the first thing that came to mind, was that promise to him. So we live in Ontario, and due to, I don't know what it's like at other parts of the country, but trying to get therapy after an event like this is very, very difficult. Trying to get any kind of wraparound community support is hard. There's just not the funding, there's not the recognition, there's none of that. It took a lot of knocking and yelling and banging on doors to get, the help that was needed and that we could. And even now, even though my grandson's discharged from therapy, and so have I been, we there's still a lot of trauma related stuff that occurs, nightmares, flashbacks, deep sadness. So that definitely plays a part in the difficulty. But I mean, as far as the best things about raising your grandchild is that this is the only thing I can do for her now. After so many years of um, trying to help and to, be there for her as fully as I could, this is the only thing I can do now for her. I can be her voice, and I can do my absolute everything for her child, for my grandson. And that's my aim. And it's a gift too, that bond is so special. And it's even though it's difficult because I don't have, like I say, the community support. His friends' parents are not my age, so there's not that. I'm retired. I don't work, so I don't have those outside friendships. So it's very difficult to be alone. It's still worth it. It's still worth it because that bond and the meaning that it gives to my life, and I hope to his, will be worth it. You know, that's uh, that's what I think anyway. Um, yeah, that loneliness is a difficult thing to deal with. The lack of friendships that you normally form when you're raising a child. I'm also homeschooling him because he was having a lot of difficulty in school, um, a lot of bullying. There was also some stigma from other children due to his mom's death and the way she passed away. And he is much happier and doing much better outside of the school environment. Now, a difficulty for me is to try to not hold him too close, to allow him that independence. It's hard when you've lost a child. You really, whereas with my own children, my main priority was to raise them to be grown-ups and to fly. With my grandson is to keep him safe, and I've got to be really aware of that in myself and in my interactions with him. So, to let him grow and continue in independence. and not hold him too close. So, and he knew how much I loved his mom. Some things are hard. He'll say, she didn't think you did this right, or she didn't think you did that right, or this really hurt her when you did this or said that. And that's hard to hear. But again, I'm glad he has a safe place to go with those thoughts, and someone who knew his mother in all of her faults and all of her beauty and in all of her silliness, and I can go to him with that, with those answers, and with well, this is why that happened. And I'm also lucky in that she left behind a whole bunch of journals, and um, you know, her memories written down. I am so blessed with that, and that is something that I can pass on to him when he's older, should he want it. It gives me real insight into her struggles and how she felt and things I didn't know, things that happened to her that I didn't know. And it breaks my heart some, but it also brings her closer to me. It really allows me to see her true face. So, yeah, that's kind of my experience, and the way that this has gone. You know, um, I don't know what else to say. Never done this before, so but yeah, so it's a hard place to be though. I was at the hairdresser yesterday, and the lady beside me was grousing about the druggies and this and that. And on my way out, I stopped and I looked at her, stood in front of her, and I said, all those druggies have mothers. You should be careful what you say in public, you know? So I would have liked to have gone on and advocated and really spoke, but I couldn't. I mean, I started crying, so I just walked away at that point. But there's, I just wish the government would do more and policies would change. That's all, you know?
Mm.
So, yeah,
Thank you for
you're
your
welcome.
courage and your bravery too. As you said, you've never done this before, so your vulnerability and sharing your heart with all of us. And when you commented that this is the only thing I can do for her now, and this is what she absolutely would want to do, you
Yeah.
to do. And the fact that you were able to share those silly stories and those things and bring the light side of it is a gift
Hmm.
that you're able to give to your grandson.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Thank you.
thank you so much. And just a quick reminder, if people have comments or things that there is a chat going, and so you can pop things into the chat if you would like. Um, Next, it's my honor to introduce Shauna Taylor. Shauna is a lived experience advocate from Airdrie. I'll say Alberta because everybody may not know where Airdrie is, who began her journey in harm reduction after her 17-year-old daughter became dependent to fentanyl. Her personal experience with the toxic drug crisis drove her to speak out and share her family's story, challenge the stigma that surrounds substance use. Shauna is an active member of Mom Stop the Harm. Shauna works to reduce shame and stigma that prevents families from accessing help. She currently works in the dental field while raising her granddaughter and is now focusing on advocating for fair legal representation for individuals incarcerated due to substance misuse. Shauna is a proud mom to, and you'll correct me here because I'm reading it. So, uh, um, Kennedy,
Kennedy.
Kennedy,
Yep.
Nathan, Kennedy, who's 27, Nathan, who's 26, and Grandma to Ariel, who's almost 6, and Maverick, who is 3.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here today, Shauna.
Thank you. Yes, Ariel actually just turned 6 on Monday, so now I have a 6-year-old. My perspective and maybe some of the things I'm going to touch on are a little bit different than Carolyn's. My daughter has had a substance use disorder since she was 17 years old. She has been sober going on almost 2 years, but she has been incarcerated for the last year on a very significant charge that occurred while she was in her active addiction. I took custody of Ariel the day she was born, kind of. I knew that my daughter and her then boyfriend had planned a child, thinking that that would be the thing that would push them over the edge to choose her, I guess, experience full sobriety. They thought having a child would be the thing that they hadn't tried, that would, like, they just couldn't even imagine that they would still want to use while they were raising a child. So, and unfortunately, that didn't go as planned. I didn't see Kennedy a lot during her pregnancy. I reached out to quite a few programs that are offered out of Calgary. They have a really good program out of the Peter Lougheed that goes out and finds girls who are in active addiction, and or they're referred to the program and they help them with prenatal care and things like that. I tried to get her to go to appointments, but there's always an issue with showing up for things and being where she said she was supposed to be when I'd go to pick her up. So Ariel didn't have very good prenatal care. Luckily, the human body is an amazing thing, and I have a beautiful 6-year-old granddaughter. But when Ariel was born, the one thing that I would strongly recommend in the province of Alberta is, as crazy as this is going to sound, this is my personal experience, is to have child and family services involved. Because I ran a support group in Airdrie for almost 5 years, and the amount of family members who took over the care of their other family members' children were not able to access any sort of support. It is very difficult to get counseling, get monetary support, get anything, unless, in Alberta anyway, unless you have that integration with Child and Family Services. I am not saying that I would suggest that you call CFS on somebody, but at the hospital, when Kennedy, I'm not even sure who registered her. I know that as soon as she was brought in, obviously they did know that she was suffering from a substance use disorder, and Family Services was called immediately. So she was delivered on August the 4th, which was a holiday. And I was called in by the social worker about 2 days later. I was getting my hair cut, and they called me and said that Ariel I'd been there for the delivery and everything. And they said that they'd spoken to Kennedy and Chris, and they had decided, obviously, that they weren't far enough along in their trial of sobriety to take care of Ariel. So what I consider doing a temporary home for her for 6 months. I was recently divorced. I had no children living at home. And the thought of raising another child was, I'm going to be very honest, in this 10 minutes that I have, I did not want to do this. I was adamant that I was not interested. I moved from my parents straight to marriage, which lasted 23 years. My ex served in the reserves and did a tour in Afghanistan. I had done my time. I'd raised 2 kids, had finally come to terms with the fact that Kennedy was on this path, and I was going to do the best that I could to support her in the ways that I could. but still keep a connection with her and a relationship with her. And I was doing really good with that. I had a son, my kids. I just had this, how I thought my life was going to continue to be. And the same as the before and after, from the minute my daughter told me she was addicted to fentanyl, my life changed when that little girl was born. I start at this point, I had spoken to Kennedy and Chris, and we had discussed adoption. The social worker came in, and of course, they are adamantly against that. They push for family members to take care of children. I understand there's been research done on it. In my experience and speaking with numerous families, I don't always think that that is the best choice. And again, not always a popular opinion, but I think sometimes grandparents or family members will take on the responsibility of a child out of guilt and not because they're fully committed to the needs of what that child is going to be, and that it is going to be difficult, and it is going to be a constant question of if you're doing it right, if you're doing it wrong. How do you balance being a mom, being a grandmother? Not that one is better than the other, but that was my opinion right off the bat. Kennedy and Chris tried really hard, but after about 3 days of Ariel being in the NICU, she was obviously born dependent, and was slowly being weaned off morphine. They expected her to be in the hospital for 12 days. She ended up only being there 7, and has had no complications from the drug use in utero, which is a small miracle. After 6 months, it was apparent that Kennedy and Chris still were not in the position to do this. And of course, after like 3 days, I knew I would never let that baby out of my sight again. Took us almost 2 years and numerous court appearances trying to find Kennedy and Chris so that they could go to court. In Alberta, again, they take it very seriously, taking away a parent's rights to a child, which is understandable. But there was so much time wasted that Ariel and I could have started our lives together maybe earlier, that was wasted on the constant setting court dates and then not showing up and then setting another one 5 months later. So it did take almost 2 years before I was granted guardianship. I chose legal guardianship in Alberta instead of adoption because I never wanted Ariel to not know who her parents were. That even though, sorry, even though they couldn't take care of her, that they loved her. So in my mind, I felt that keeping their names on her birth certificate was a little sign to them that she would always know who they were. This got better. It was easier once I took guardianship. Things started to fall into place a little bit. I still have supports with CFS. I will till she's 18. But the thing that they don't tell you when you take guardianship and they, like, I was, in my opinion, not threatened by Child Family Services when we were in the hospital, because they basically said, there's no foster care in Airdrie for a baby who's got dependency issues. And if you don't take her, we're going to have to drop her off at the Children's Cottage, which is like a place where people can go to when they're struggling as parents, and they can have their kids in a safe spot when they are worried that they may do harm or different things like that. And I'd never heard of the Children's Cottage. We came very middle class family, had no dealings with CFS in the past. I'll try to speed up. I'm sorry. Um, so I of course felt incredible guilt about not taking her. And I just, I don't know, I just wish it had been explained better in the beginning. I wish that that the social workers weren't so keen to just get replaced with a family member and not sit with those family members. I had to do the courses, of course, that when you go through the government and you have care of a child in the system, I guess, how to take care of them, what to look for, ACEs, all that stuff, which kind of goes out the window when you're actually doing. I'm still waiting for her to call back. My granddaughter wants a play date and her mom hasn't called us back yet. Anyway, so those are my situations. Do I love my granddaughter? 100%. Would I do it again? I don't know. I just don't. It's hard. Oh, it's hard all the time. As Carolyn mentioned, support's so non-existent. My friends who were friends before I had Ariel don't want to hang out because they don't have a 6-year-old. They don't understand bedtimes and gentle parenting and self-regulation. Ariel has been diagnosed with severe ADHD and a mood disorder. More from, I keep saying to the pediatrician, is it from the drugs? And he's like, they didn't help, but this is a 100% genetic. So he's like, you can right off the bat stop blaming your daughter for anything. Ariel lost her dad 2 years ago, this past July, to a drug poisoning. He was sober for 8 months and same thing, reused drugs, and he didn't make it. Nobody found him in time. So Ariel knows that her daddy is in the clouds, and we talk about it all the time. She loves to freak out the kids at daycare and goes, "Oh, my daddy died," and it's very casual to her. And they all run home and tell their parents, and then I get phone calls, and I'm like, "I'm sorry, this is our life, and if it's difficult for you and you're having to have conversations with your kids, then maybe that's something you should be having anyway, because I'm not the only one your kids are going to run into."
Thank you, Shauna. Thank
Sorry.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your heart. And, when you said that you kept their names on there so that they know when their kids grow up that they love them, that connection is still here. And all of my experience with people that use substances, they absolutely love their children. And so,
Yeah.
and for shining light on some of the, you know, we aren't given everything. And I was noticed in the chat that other people are saying also in this province, in this province. So for bringing that honesty up, that it's like, what are we looking at? What are we getting into? And that, you took some time to weigh in that at first you were like, no, this is not something I really want to do. And just your journey and your process with that. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sorry, I just did want to say too, my daughter did have a second child that we did give up for adoption. So if anybody wants questions about that after, please let me know.
Thank you. Yeah, just taking a minute, can just kind of breathe and just feeling Shauna's heart. Rhonda is our next panelist, and Rhonda is Chris and Jade's mom, and I'm just kind of Benson, and I'm just trying to look at, and you can absolutely correct me, Rhonda. Melissa, I'm just looking at how I wrote it down, and I'm sure it's not correct.
It's Malachi.
Malachi. Okay, Malachi. I forgot the I and when I wrote it down. So Malachi's grandma. So welcome, Rhonda.
Thanks, Antoinette. As with any meeting where folks with this similar lived experience has been, so far I've just heard a lot of similarities in Carolyn and Shauna's story. I've heard a lot of interesting things from Rebecca as well. So thank you all for that. Um, so I have two kids, Chris and Jade. Chris is 37 and Jade is 29. Both Chris and Jade entered substance use in different ways. Jade was a bit younger than Chris was when she started using. Um, she has always had pretty significant learning challenges as well as mental health struggles. Whereas Chris was kind of like my high achiever kid who did have a little bit of social anxiety. So using substances was a nice social lubricant for him to be able to fit in with those around him. So two different paths into a similar kind of uh, journey, I guess. So both of them did use various substances. Chris's substance of choice were opioids, and Jade's substance of choice were anything that's an up, so meth or crack. But of course, they all use everything, as well as alcohol. Um, Chris showed signs of substance use disorder earlier than Jade did because he's 8 years older than her. And he ended up, stopping using substances for quite some time, which was, great for him. It gave him a really real sense of accomplishment. Jade, on the other hand, started using substances here in Edmonton. Went through a very tumultuous time, spent a lot of time houseless. Yeah, her mental health issues really are just exasperated by the substance use. It's not really the other way around with her. So she does have a lot of aggression. She's diagnosed borderline personality disorder, and it just makes everything really tough. I love her dearly. It's just hard. So Jade decided that she was going to go to Ontario to fix her problems. She thought that by changing provinces, everything would be fine. And, it kind of worked. Like, it was a change of pace. She went with some friends, so she was kind of out on her own. Unfortunately, she had gotten pregnant from somebody when she was in Edmonton, and that person was very abusive to her. And in my view, thankfully, that child did not survive. So he was stillborn. It was very sad, but on the other hand, I think that overall it was for the best for Jade because she would have been connected with this highly abusive man for the rest of her life. So it wasn't that long after, though, that she had a boyfriend and she got pregnant in Ontario. So Benson was born May 20th of 2019. And 3 days later, Chris's boy Malachi was born in Edmonton on May 23rd, 2019. So I have these two grandchildren who are 3 days apart, who look like they're siblings because they're both little blue-eyed blondes. And yeah, they're fantastic kids. I love them to death. While Jade was in Ontario, she did start using substances quite heavily again, and I was contacted by Child and Family Services in Ontario to be the safety plan for Benson. So what they basically asked is, can I come and get Benson if it comes to that? And I said, yes, of course, I will go get Benson. And then I paid a visit to them. This is in 2020. Paid a visit to them. Jade's living with baby daddy. His name is John. So John, Jade, Benson living together. I got there and it was an abysmal situation. I'm not going to lie. It was shocking and frightening to see what was happening at that time. I flew back to Edmonton, and within about a week, I got another call from Child and Family Services, and ongoing calls from then on. And then there was an incident, probably I think it was October of 2020, where Jade went missing and was gone and nobody could find her. And John was struggling to take care of Benson. And then we made a plan with Child and Family Services for me to go get the family and move them here. So I moved them here November 13th of 2020. And the day before we moved here, I found out that John is autistic. So I didn't actually know that before because I don't know John very well. But he's autistic to the point where he can't look after Benson at all. So Benson basically was not being cared for when he was in Ontario. So it came real close to Benson going into care. And I'm grateful that it never came to that because he already knew his mom and dad. It's different when a child is adopted right off the bat, but to have a bond with these people, that would have been really devastating. So anyway, they moved back here. Jade got into treatment in 2021, April of 2021, and she hasn't been back since. So in May of 2021, I actually was very lucky because I had started the paperwork early because we had intervention from the Child and Family Services in Alberta, who kind of guided me, and they were very good at guiding me to be able to get guardianship very quickly. I actually got guardianship before that. I think it's a 10-month waiting period that you need in order to get guardianship. 10 months of you looking after the child full time, unless there's other circumstances. But because there were other circumstances, I was able to get guardianship very quickly. So anyway, I've had him here ever since. So he's about a year and a half when he moved here. And yeah, he's lovely and he's a joy. Then in 2020, my son died of a fentanyl overdose or drug poisoning. And he had been substance free. It would have been 6 years in May, but April of 2022, he died of fentanyl poisoning. So I've got these two grandchildren who have had a similar experience with slightly different outcomes at this moment in time. But of course, that can change at any moment. So one of the big points that I heard from Shauna is the people who use substances, their kids love them if they know them, and they love their kids. They love their kids. So that is the biggest challenge, I think, is trying to find that balance. And I always think about it as the balance of safety. And I'm not just talking about physical safety. I'm talking about emotional and psychological safety as well. So thinking about my daughter Jade's emotional safety, she needs to see Benson. She loves him. She misses him. And by not seeing Benson and having some kind of role in his life, that makes her want to use substances even more. Like, it makes it worse. Not that it's a stimulus for her to suddenly stop using, because we know that this is a health problem, and she is dependent on these substances in order for her not to feel sick. So we know that, but she does need to see him to maintain some emotional safety in herself and some psychological safety. The dad isn't much involved. He actually lives in my basement, but his autism makes it almost impossible for him to have a good relationship with him. But he is still around, and he does, see him from time to time, not often, because he just is in his own world, does his own thing. And Benson misses his mummy. He asks for her. For a while after she left my home to go into treatment, whenever he would get hurt, he would say, "Mommy, I want my mommy." And, it was very painful. And I'd say, "Mommy's not here right now. But she loves you. Grandma's here right now. We'll tell mommy what happened," that type of thing. I have a mummy rock. When Jade was in one of her treatment facilities, she made a rock that said Benson on it. And she drew pictures on it because Jade's very artistic. And whenever he had an owie, I would take the mummy rock and I would put the mummy rock on the owie. So like little things like that to maintain that connection between her and Benson. So yeah, that's probably the most challenging part, like I said, is that balancing that safety. One thing that, like we talked, I heard Rebecca talk a little bit about boundaries and what is a boundary and what is not a boundary, and when does it go too far? When does it become, that the stigma? Um, the way I look at boundaries is that boundaries are something that I do. They don't impact, they don't affect, there's nothing that the other person has to do. So I look at it as you cannot, I won't allow you to have drugs here at my house because he can get into that and I'm concerned for his safety. So that's a boundary that I set. Um, so she's worked out a way that she finds a place to stash her items before she comes over, and then she is free to go pick them up after she has her visit. And that's worked out quite well. So yeah, the balance of all the aspects of safety to me is the most challenging. And probably the best thing about having him here is, well, he's just a joy. He's very quirky. He's an interesting little guy. He's the clumsiest child I've ever seen. His dad is very clumsy too, so he comes by it naturally. But he is like, he'll just be sitting on a chair and he'll fall off. Like he's so funny. It's really great to have he and Malachi be close to each other, because now they are physically close. They're not in two different provinces, so they do get to see each other frequently. I'm grateful to Malachi's mom for allowing me to be in his life. If I lost that, that would be really hard because he's a little Chris. So I enjoy having him around as well. And that aspect has been tough. But like having a grandchild where the parent is gone, that's been really tough as well. Even just trying to keep that memory alive, because of course Chris died just before they turned 2, or 3, actually. Yeah, just before they turned 3. So that's tough, trying to keep that memory alive. So I try to talk about Chris whenever Malachi's over. I don't know if you want to call it a shrine. I mean, I'm sure most of us have these at our house, but I've got like the shelf with pictures and his urn. And the pictures contain, a lot of them are Chris and Malachi together, just so that he remembers that. So, yep.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump in. We have two
That's
more.
okay.
We have 2 more speakers still, and I'm just aware of time. And you bring up a lot of valid points. It's interesting to me, like you said, you had a lot of good support from a social worker that helped you navigate that, so that there is hope out there, and absolutely, and ways to stay connected, and bringing up that component about psychological and emotional safety for everybody. And I love how you navigated the mummy rock. I think that's a really cool idea. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. Our next panelist, and then we have one more person afterwards. So I'm going to encourage people to keep using the chat. There's some good conversations and heartfelt hugs being sent out to the mamas and the grandmas here. So Leslie, and I would like to introduce Leslie as Hope's Gran.
Mhm. Thank you. Hi. Yeah, thank you. Well, my daughter Heather, who is going to be 38 in September, is in the downtown east side of Vancouver, and we're not in touch. I'm just going to try and get onto the main. Okay. We're not in touch very often. We hear about her from people that work at the agencies down there, and but she very rarely has a phone, so she doesn't call. We can't really find out where she is. From what I understand, she is without housing, so she stays at people's places and at shelters and that sort of thing. She's been down there probably about 5 or 6 years. Being addicted to substances since sort of she's coming up to 38, so probably about 20 years now. She presented with anxiety and depression in her teenage years and was put on Ativan by our family doctor. And that seemed to work quite well, and she was able to go to college and become a yoga teacher. But then the doctor decided it was time to wean her off of it, and so whether it happened too quickly, we don't know. But the upshot of it was that she decided to, self medicate, and so that's what ended up happening. And about that time, my husband and I retired, and we moved to Main Island, which is off the coast of Vancouver Island, and Heather ended up down in the downtown east side. In 2020, my sister in England was sick, and I went over there to help with her. She ended up passing away, unfortunately, and so my husband came over afterwards to help out with the funeral. And the night of my sister Linda's funeral, we decided to turn our Canadian cell phones on, and both of us had messages from St. Paul's Hospital. Well, our first thought was that Heather had overdosed. That was our only thought, because we had no idea, not having seen her, that she was pregnant. And so when I did end up getting in touch with the social worker at St. Paul's, she said Heather has been in here and she's given birth to a baby girl. She's tiny. She was only just over 3 pounds. She's tiny, but she's feisty, is what she said. And she's definitely maintained the feistiness. She was in the NICU. And so this was a Friday night, Valentine's Day, that Hope was born. And we returned to Vancouver on the following Tuesday. We were really, in shock. We phoned our 2 sons, one living in Vancouver and one in Toronto. And one of them was able to go and see the baby, who was still unnamed at that point. But, we had to break the news, and none of us knew anything about Heather being pregnant. But so we got back on the Tuesday. We went right from the airport to St. Paul's and saw our first grandchild in the incubator, took her out and held her. And it was amazing. I've always loved babies. So, it was wonderful. We were still in shock and, of course, jet lagged from a trip from London. The following day, we stayed with some friends in Vancouver. The following day, we were met by the people from Minister of Children and Families. And so this was the Wednesday, and they said, "So are you going to take her?" And we said, well, we're certainly thinking about it. I forgot to say that our daughter had discharged herself on the weekend, on the Sunday, after she'd given birth. And so we didn't get to see her or talk to her about what had happened. So Hope was basically abandoned. And so we met with our 2 sons that night over dinner and said, this is what's happened. This is what we're thinking about. And, what do you think? And one of our sons, our youngest son, Ben, he said, "Well, I know you want to take her, Mom, but do you want to take her, Dad? Really? You just retired?" And he said, "Well, Ben," he said, "it's not like I'd go out looking for a newborn to raise. But, this is our granddaughter. This is Heather's girl, Heather's child." And so that was that. So we became permanent guardians. It was a very easy, straightforward process. Heather wasn't involved at all. We still hadn't talked to her. They gave us a list of lawyers to talk to, and we contacted somebody, and we went to court a couple of times. Of course, this was at the beginning of COVID now, so things were sort of shut down a bit, but we ended up choosing permanent guardianship as opposed to adoption, because our thought at the time was that we would just be doing this temporarily until Heather was able to go into recovery and possibly take over her responsibility as a mother. We named the baby Hope. I belong to I facilitate a Holding Hope group here on Maine, and there were some comments about the name, but anyways, we gave her 2 or 3 other names as well in case she wasn't keen on the name. But no, she loves her name Hope, and we've had her, brought her home when she was about just over 4 pounds, brought her home to Main Island, and had received so much support from friends over here. We had people that we included in our bubble, and they helped out with Hope. They would come and hold her and take her for walks while we had some time to, shower and do things like that. So she starts kindergarten in September. She turned 5 last February, and she's going to be going to kindergarten in September. So, yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, we're both in our 70s. We've had 3 children of our own. Heather was our eldest, and then 2 sons, Devin and Ben. Like I say, and I used to be a kindergarten teacher as well, so I love young kids. But I mean, it's one thing to have them during the day and then come home. But so she's a lot of work, and it's an only child situation, and I've never been in a situation like that with an only child. I mean, she's the boss, it seems. But she is a joy. Starts singing the first thing in the morning, and even before we've had our coffee. So yeah, she's a joy. She is also challenging. She's quite bright. She is very into art and drama and that sort of thing. Right now she's going through the princess stage, which can be a bit annoying sometimes, but anyway, she's of course starting to ask questions about her mummy. That started probably 2 years ago, I would say. We said, well, your mummy lives in Vancouver. We vowed right from the beginning that we weren't going to lie to her. But at the same time, we didn't want her to be worried. And so we haven't told her that your mummy's sick. We just said that she's in Vancouver. She lives in Vancouver. And, well, why can't I live with my mummy? I want to live with my mummy. And we said, well, she doesn't have a home. And so that kind of would pacify her for a while. But the questions are starting to come. And I mean, it's getting harder and harder. So we do have her talking to a counselor, mainly about starting the school, not so much about her mom. But we work on her placement in the family. Like I've taken her, because I'm originally English, we've taken her over to England a couple of times. So she's met part of our family over there, and she's very interested in where she fits in everything, and who's he to me and who's she to me, and that sort of thing. And I think from what the counselor said, that's important, that she feels part of a family. Main Island is quite a diverse community. There's different family situations over here. So if it had to happen anywhere, it's good that it's here, and everybody knows the situation here. I'll talk to anyone who wants to know what the situation is. And yeah, so we're just, I've always said we just take it one day at a time. And that's what we're doing, just taking it one day at a time.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
I think that I love how, you answer Hope's questions age appropriately, like,
Mm.
and not try to overgive, but just developmentally meeting her where she's at. So, and I'm really cognizant of time. We have about 10 minutes left. We have one more speaker. So I'm going to move right to Agnes. If I can just have you pop on screen and maybe just to save a little bit. Agnes is with an organization called Starlings, and I will leave Agnes to give you a short synopsis about it. I can send the link out afterwards when I send out the recording to everybody. And the organization has some supports for grandparents. So I'll let Agnes explain that to everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much, Antoinette, and to all the grandparents who shared their stories. Yeah, just I know we can send all the hearts and emojis and whatnot, but I just want to say thank you first and foremost. Antoinette, I'm going to put in our website. I'm going to try and keep this really short and simple. If I can share my screen, I have a few images just to share so people can kind of see. But if you look on the website, you'll see. But my name is Agnes. I'm in Calgary, Alberta, here, Treaty 7 territory. I founded this organization called Starlings Community, which I lead alongside other peers and individuals who grew up with parental substance use challenges and the intersection of, fearing their overdose, fearing them dying to a toxic drug supply, having parents be incarcerated. And, some of our peers have lost a parent to the toxic drug supply. And we host caregiver sessions. And many of the individuals accessing our resources as caregivers are grandparents. And so I just want to say thank you so much. Our biggest goal at Starlings Community is really how, we say, what do you need? As somebody who grew up with parental substance use challenges, as a caregiver, a parent that intersected with the criminal justice system, it was always there wasn't enough information or resources. And so as we kind of have grown our organization and more young people come, we're seeing, right, we know that family members are a huge part of that person's community of support. They're learning about who they are. They're making sense of their experiences. They're making meaning about who their parent is and who their family is. And that's all coming back to who they are and who they believe they are. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, so I don't need to say that everything, all of the grandparents here had brought up and the work that you're doing in helping the young people understand about themselves is incredible. So I will briefly share what we have. Please email me if you have any questions. That's my email on the screen. The link to our website is there. But basically, we provide resources and supports to caregivers, so kinship, family caregivers, anybody who is supporting a young person, and especially family members, because we know how complex it is of having to navigate, potentially caregiving for your child while also raising and caregiving for young people. And so we bring in that perspective of what is it like for this young person growing up with parental substance use challenges from that young person's lens. And so we create resources. All of them are created by young people with lived experience. So we have a caregiver toolkit, right, for talking about losing a parent to death after an overdose or a toxic drug supply. And this is all, we had young people go through and tell us what they wanted to hear or they needed. We also have resources for young people. This is kind of the bread and butter of what we do. And one of the ways that we do that is through Hope Kits, and we provide that to caregivers like yourselves. And in it, we provide resources and tools for yourself. Obviously, there's so much that we'd want to put into these and provide, recognizing the need for respite, the need for support. But this is our small way to provide a small package that says, hey, you're not alone. How can we help you? What is it that you need, and how can we help you get that? While also making sure that a young person knows that there are other young people who have grown up with what their experiencing. They can connect with us. And we know a lot of young people. I know for me as a youth, I never would have joined a peer group. It's the reality. That's why we do more peer leadership. Young people who are eager to create and co-create with us to make sure our young peers feel supported. And so this is, we call it peer support in a box. It's our way to provide anyone from age 5 to honestly 65. We've sent one to know, hey, this is what's helped us. We hope it helps you. So you can order those for free. I know there's people here outside of Alberta. I've never not shipped it out to somebody outside of Alberta. We say they're for Alberta caregivers. You can please go to the website, order them. We have them specifically for families. And again, these have, when you fill out the form, it'll say things like, what is that young person's experience? Our peers, our young people, myself included. I'm not young anymore, but myself and still, we write personal letters. We make sure if that young person lost a parent to a toxic drug supply, they're getting notes from somebody who has that same experience. And then ideally, we also have one-on-one caregiver sessions that you would just pack them with us. That way, we're respecting boundaries and we're respecting how you're talking about, your child who either is currently using substances or, who has died from a toxic drug supply, because we have resources about grief. We have resources. We have a co-coloring book that we created that provides caregivers the language and the tools, the prompts to ask about, to bring up conversations about like, hey, that's kind of scary thinking about these things. Who is someone you can talk to? We provide that language. And it is all for free. I share that because we are 100% volunteer run organization. We do this because we know as peers who've either been raised by family members or had grandparents in our lives and some who haven't, right? We know the power of that family connection. We also know that families need respite. And so this is our small way of saying, hey, how can we help you? I will also say you'll see on there the last image. Two things for International Overdose Awareness Day. We are creating a zine, just a small magazine of stories, of poems, of letters from our peers across Canada who have lost a parent to the toxic drug supply. So if you have a young person and you want to order that, we are shipping them out in our Hope Kits at the end of the month. Again, they're free. So you can hit that link for the Hope Kit. And then we are also hosting roundtable conversations specifically here in Calgary. So if you are in Calgary and surrounding area, we want to know, what is it that we can create or do or have that's going to make it easier for you to build that trust and relationship with the young person in your life. You can find all of those things on that link that I provided. And the website, there's lots of information. It can be overwhelming. So if you need anything, please reach out. I run our one-on-one caregiver sessions. So it's me directly that you'll be chatting with. Tasia and Cassandra and Maya are the other team members that you might engage with. But in any case, I will leave it at that. I know this has been lots of information and connecting, and I'll just end it on thank you for everything you're doing. I genuinely mean that. As somebody who chats with young people across Canada, you know the power of what you're doing, and if there's a way that we can help you, then please reach out anytime.
Oops, I was muted. Thank you so much, Agnes. I know you packed stuff in, and I'm always amazed at how fast this time goes because we've got just a couple minutes left. So thank you for all that you do and for sharing that and then offering it across Canada, the Hope Kits. I really loved when we connected before, some of the coloring sheets and some of those things and resources that I haven't seen, and maybe there are other resources other places. So but just I will, everybody that's registered for this Connect session, I will send them the link once it's completed, along with some of the resources that Rebecca also popped in the chat. And so you will get that directly. Also that this Connect session will be on Mom Stop the Harm YouTube channel. I'm not exactly sure when, but I know sometime this week because I'll send the recording and then the person that takes care of that. So just in really closing off, I just want to thank everybody for your sharing your hearts, coming in, sharing your journeys, sharing your stories, sharing everything that's been happening. I think I'm safe to say that it's all about love. It's all about because we love our children, we love our grandchildren. We're here to support and love and care for one another. And we'll keep bringing things forward in our different provinces and bringing our voices forward. And it is really all about how do we care and connect with one another. So again, thank you to all of our panelist speakers for sharing your tender journeys with us. And then I loved, a couple people popped pictures in the chat of their grandbabies, and because we're talking about people and lives here. So thank you everybody for taking time out of your day. I know I noticed in the chat some people had commented that that they came and they are not in that situation and hadn't considered it. So we're raising awareness by sharing our voices and sharing our stories. And so thank you to everybody for coming today, and watch your watch your inbox link of what you registered for. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.